Um, Excuse me. Also, I'm a little bit sick today, so sorry if my voice sounds really terrible. But I wanted to get a video out because Wednesday is the day I want to record. Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Read a Game of Thrones. My name is Riakeem, and today we're going to be talking about the very first Arya Stark viewpoint chapter in A Game of Thrones. A Game of Thrones is a book by George R.R. Martin, and in this Let's Read series, I'm going to be reading the book off camera and then coming at you live on camera and talking to, not live, but and talking on camera about my analyses and thoughts of that chapter. And today we have chapter 7, like I said, the very first Arya viewpoint chapter. So without further ado, let's get into it. Just another note too as well, down below in the comments right there, there's more information about the book and my video series. So thank you for tuning in, and let's talk about Arya Stark. So I like to start off my analyses of the chapter by talking about a who, what, when, where, and why of the chapter. And also, this is my second time doing a commentary where I'm looking at the camera. So excuse me if I sometimes look over there, because that's where my script is, and I'm trying to work on, developing my on-camera personality. So here we go. So the who in this chapter, we have Arya Stark. She is our viewpoint character. Every chapter is divided by a viewpoint character, and in this one, it's Arya Stark. And then we also have some other major characters in the form of Sansa Stark and Jon Snow, and those are sort of the three essential characters in the chapter. But there are a ton of other characters, but we're not going to go into detail about every single character, but they might be mentioned. So we have those two characters. And what happens in this chapter, Arya has to do lady things, but she doesn't really want to do lady things. She's not good at doing lady things. A lot of the things that she wants to do and are good at are sort of unbecoming of a lady. She's not good at stitching like we see with her versus Sansa, but she's really good at riding a horse, or so she says, and it's her viewpoint. So she thinks she's good at riding a horse. So do we. When this is still early in the book, it's only chapter 7, right? So Robert has come into town. He's come to Winterfell. He's asked Eddard Stark to come down to King's Landing to serve as hand of the king. So we're in the time period that's after maybe a day, maybe a little bit of time has passed, not too much time, but the king and family are still in Winterfell. So that's sort of the time period that we're in when this chapter takes place, right at the beginning of the story of the diegetic. I don't know if you even say diegetics in terms of a book, but right in the beginning of the story world. Next we have where is Winterfell, right? We are in some sort of a stitching classroom, if you will, in the keep, and then we end in the courtyard where a lot of the men in the story are, practicing. A lot of the kids, really. So the why. This is an important chapter because Arya is established as a metaphorical bastard. She's not literally a bastard like how Jon Snow is, but she is sort of an outlier in the family. She doesn't fit in with her sister, and as a young lady, she is expected to be a certain way, and she does not fit that mold, as we see her in comparison to Sansa, and as well as in comparison to Princess Marcella. So that's sort of the why. Then we're going to talk about some of the plot points in the chapter. We see that we have a real mean girl situation with Arya Stark and Sansa Stark in this room with some other girls that they know, or that are in the keep, and they're learning their stitch work. Thing about being a young lady that where the men are out fighting and being knights and things. Women are typically, they're stitching, they're cooking, they're cleaning. That's sort of the time period that the story is based off of. And Arya is not very good at stitching. She notices that Princess Marcella is also not very good at stitching too. She says she's just as good. But Sansa is a rock star at stitching. She's over there in the class like, I'm stitching, I'm so good. And Arya's just like, So there's a little bit of a sibling turmoil there with some of the things that Sansa is good at. And Sansa starts being really pretty, and she does everything pretty, but we're going to talk more about that later. So plot points, we get that. And then so Arya gets frustrated and because she's not good. And then she also gets frustrated because some of the other girls in this class, I'm going to call it a class, are talking about the prince and how dreamy the Prince Joffrey is. And Arya disagrees. She doesn't think that he's dreamy at all. So between being different from the other girls in terms of her skill level with stitching and not agreeing with them, she's sort of the outlier. She stands out. The other girls kind of pick at her a little bit. And even her sister doesn't really stand up for her. So she gets really upset and frustrated. She starts crying. She runs out. And eventually she just leaves. And she goes to where the boys are. They're practicing their sword work with the royal family, the Starks and the Lannisters, and maybe a few people from other courts. So she gets to the courtyard and she sees some of her brothers fighting. And the chapter ends where she runs into John, who is also watching these practice fights. And she sort of has a better relationship with John, who is the literal bastard. So we see that Arya and Sansa don't really have a great relationship. But Arya and John have an amazing relationship, it would seem. And at the end of the chapter, we get, through Arya's perspective, that the Lannisters and the Starks sort of butt heads right down to the kids. And we already know that Eddard and Catelyn, by extension, do not, Eddard and Catelyn, they don't like the Lannisters. They have referred to it in the past as being infested by Lannisters. All right. So, moving on, we are going to now talk a little bit more in depth about some of the characters in the chapter. So, or talking about some of the characters and how they relate to each other. Looking at Arya and Sansa as sisters, we see a physical description of Sansa finally, that she has high cheekbones and she has auburn hair like her mother, who is a Tully, or who was a Tully before becoming a Stark. And she is described as being more of a lady, right down to what she names her direwolf, Lady. And we already know from earlier chapters that she has been raising a dire wolf. Now Arya is a little bit different. Arya and John are the only two Stark kids who actually have who look like Stark children. They look more like Ned than the Tully side. They look more like the Stark side. They have lustrous brown hair and long and sullen faces. Arya has her direwolf named Nymeria, and Nymeria has eyes like two golden coins, which is a really amazing description. She named Nymeria after the warrior queen of Roan, who led her people across the narrow sea. So we're getting a little bit more history through Arya's perspective. The wolf pup loved her, even if no one else did. So we see this close interaction between Arya and her wolf, and how Arya, from her perspective, feels sort of unloved based on who she is. So already Arya is shaping up to be a relatable protagonist for people, or kids, adults, who kind of feel left out, who don't feel like they don't fit any sort of mold. So Arya is going to be a great character like that, maybe for little girls, whereas John could be that character for little boys. And not to say that they can't be that character for the other genders, it's just, it helps to have someone that looks like you, if you will. So, looking at some of the quotes from the text will give you some textual evidence of why Arya is so different from Sansa. Arya has the hands of a blacksmith, where Sansa's work is as pretty as she is. Someone with the hands of a blacksmith, rough hands, really rough, maybe not good for delicate work like stitching, whereas Arya is very delicate and pretty, Sansa, different. She did everything prettily. Arya thought with dull resentment. So we see that Arya has some sort of negative, some sort of negative reaction to Sansa being Miss Perfect, if you will. We see that Sansa is infatuated with Joffrey, where Arya is not. Another difference. John says he looks like a girl, Arya says, when I think she was sort of kind of teasing her sister, like, oh, you think he's cute? Well, he looks like a girl, It's kind of funny. I think Arya has a great sense of humor so far, from what we have seen from her. Yeah. And Sansa definitely takes after her mother a little bit, and I think Catelyn Stark is a little bit rude, and Sansa is definitely a little bit rude. When talking about John, he may be a half brother, but he's still her brother. They grew up together. Sansa says, "Poor John. He gets jealous because he's a bastard." And then Arya goes, "He's our brother." But Sansa quickly quips that he is a half brother. So I just find that kind of rude. Like, if I had a half sibling who I cared about at all, I wouldn't be all like, oh, he's just my half brother. It's kind of rude. Okay, so now talking about some of the other characters, the non-Sansa and the non-Arya characters. We're going to come back and talk about John later. We see Septa, who is sort of this, if you ever had that teacher in school, grade school, who was really strict, they're in front of the class with their glasses down, and you're in the back doing something that you're not supposed to, or you're not working on your assignment, or you're not doing well at your assignment, and you're afraid that you're going to get caught. That is Septa. She seems to be this, or in the book says she is bony-faced, sharp-eyed, and a thin, lipless mouth made for frowning. I'm thinking of like a stern, thin old lady librarian who's teaching stitch work and is like popping people with rulers. We have Beth Cassell, who is Sir Roderick's daughter, and we're going to see Sir Roderick later when Arya's story goes to the courtyard. Sir Roderick is the master at arms. We see Jane Poole, who is Sansa's best friend, and she is the daughter of Winterfell's steward. Now, Jane Poole in this chapter, for what little we get of her, is really characterized as, this little brat. She is like, where Sansa at least kind of hides it a little bit, Jane is kind of external with her, I'm going to say it, her bitchiness. Like, when Arya does something wrong, Jane Poole is sort of right there to sort of smirk and quip at her. She even calls Arya Horseface, because Arya's good at riding horses, so she insults her by calling her Horseface. How rude. Just a quote from the text, Jane was smirking on Sansa's behalf, or on her behalf, is what the quote actually says. So we kind of see her physically smirking and being a really bratty kid. So after Arya leaves this classroom setting with all the girls that have, she leaves in sort of a shameful way. She runs out, she's crying. She knows she's going to get in trouble, just like if, you were in middle school and you ran out of class. Her mother is not going to be happy about this, but she does it anyway because she's fed up, she's filled with emotion. And she runs into John, who cannot be with the royal sons, in the courtyard of her training, because, a bastard can't strike a royal, or a royal family. So she runs into him, and they have this sort of moment where they're watching the other kids in the court, practice their sword work. So we get the scene with Bran versus Tommen, who are both Tommen is the youngest Lannister, but Bran is not the youngest Stark. We have Rickon, who is the youngest Stark. But Rickon is definitely not old enough to be doing sword work. I doubt it. He's 3. Or I believe Bran is 7, but don't quote me on that. Watch the earlier video where I talk about how old the characters are. We get a little bit more. We get the information about Sir Roderick Cassell. He is described as old, and we know that he is a great stout keg of a man. I'm kind of a keg of a man myself. I bring my 6-pack to every party. We learn a little bit more about Theon Greyjoy. We know also, in addition to learning a little bit about Theon Greyjoy, we learn that the house sigil of the Greyjoys is a golden kraken. One other thing about sort of symbols and images that we see that Prince Joffrey's shield that he has with him in the training grounds it's got half an emblem on it, right? So half of the emblem is the Lion of the Lannisters, and the other half is the Stag of the Baratheon. And that's really unusual because, him being Baratheon born, putting that Lannister, that maternal shield, that crest on his shield, is really telling of how important the Lannisters are, that their family is on the shield with the Baratheon crest. It really should just be the Baratheon Stag. He's a Baratheon heir. When he has kids, they will be Baratheon. So we're going to talk more about that later as the story unfolds, and learn more about those characters and maybe why that would potentially be the crest of his shield. Now, we have this amazing scene with Arya and John coming together as siblings, and you can tell that these two have a close relationship, and not just because the text tells us they had always been close on page 72. That was my computer making an update. I'm working on this. But they, like I said earlier, they're the only two that appear to be Stark. Like, they look like Stark in their appearances. They both embody the representation of what it's like for life to not be fair. Arya is a girl, so she has to do ladylike things, but that's not really what she's about. She's not really into that. John is a bastard, so he doesn't get to do lord-like things when it comes to him being like with the interacting with the royal family and stuff. He always gets cast out, though life isn't fair. But we're often reminded that there are so many other people who aren't in that situation who have it worse. You know, at least both of these two have some semblance of lord status or lady status, whereas a lot of other people probably don't. You know, we're only getting like isolated royal families, yet we're seeing a ton of other characters like the Castles or the Greyjoys, and we don't know much about them quite yet, but there are a bunch of families that we're learning about who might not be as royal family or who might not be as royal. So Arya and John have a relationship to where they can easily joke with each other. John tells Arya, girls get the arms but not the swords, bastards get the swords but not the arms. And then John tells her that nothing is fair. We see some other characters who are name dropped. No Desmond this time, thank God. Who is Desmond, right? We need to know. He's dropped so often, but we know that there is a Lou, Adonis, and then we also see later at the end of the chapter Joffrey and Robb. Joffrey is a prince of the Baratheons. He's the oldest son. He's the heir to the throne. And Robb is the oldest son. I believe he's older than Joffrey, but I'm not quite sure. He's definitely taller than Robb, as we know from earlier chapters. But he is the oldest son of the Starks. And Robb, when we see them interacting, is sort of taunting Joffrey. And Joffrey comes back with, "This is a game for children," he says to Sir Roderick. So he comes off as a lot rude. He's actually kind of a little shithead, if I may. And even John tells Arya, Joffrey is truly a little shit. Like, he can't even be a big shit. He's just like a little, you hate to get it out. A little shit. So we coming from Arya's point of view, because again it is her viewpoint, we tend to not like Joffrey as readers because of the way he's acting in this situation. He's kind of looking down on everyone. He is a prince, right? You know, he's looking down on stuff that they do. Because he wants to fight with real swords and they're training, right? So they don't want to use real swords. And lastly, we see who will become one of my favorite characters, Clegane, Sandor Clegane. He is described as having a burned face, and he is muscled like a bull. And then after that, the chapter sort of ends with this sort of Stark versus Lannister so Robb and Joffrey have sort of verbal quips where it doesn't really come to blows, but it's really close. Even Sir Roderick is a little bit pissed off at the Lannister family. This is all through Arya's perspective. So everybody, thanks again so much for tuning in and watching my series of Let's Read a Game of Thrones. This has been the Arya Stark Viewpoint Chapter 7, Arya's very first viewpoint. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, everybody.